I want to suggest a few things that, Mr. Speaker, the committee should be able to look at. The committee, Mr. Speaker, should be able to look at ways and measures, as the motion says, of cushioning Kenyans from the impact of this very serious pandemic. And in that case, Mr. Speaker, they must have broad-based stimulus package that will capture the needs of the people of Kenya, that will capture, Mr. Speaker, the desires of the poor of the poor. Mr. Speaker, I said last time when I moved a motion, if we are not going to guarantee food to Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, if we are not going to guarantee food to Kenyans in, Mr. Speaker, Mathare slums, they will walk to Mudaika and get food for themselves, Mr. Speaker. If we are not going to guarantee food for Kenyans who are living in Kibera, Mr. Speaker, they will walk on foot, Mr. Speaker, to Karen, and they will get food for themselves. Mr. Speaker, you saw that in Italy, you saw that in other parts of the world, Mr. Speaker, that are already these measures that are being taken, which are important to make sure that we contain the disease in terms of a lockdown, Mr. Speaker, are having other counter, Mr. Speaker, repercussions, which include, Mr. Speaker, the fact that people are lacking food to eat. So this committee should work together and come with us with the measures to ask themselves, how best are we going to contain the spread of coronavirus, Mr. Speaker, COVID-19, and at the same time guarantee, Mr. Speaker, that there is food. In doing so, we must, Mr. Speaker, listen to various voices. Mr. Speaker, I have read, Mr. Speaker, contributions of one David D, Mr. Speaker, a person I never agree with politically, but Mr. Speaker, we must be able to listen to proposals that various Kenyans are going to give. I have read, Mr. Speaker, there's a citizen from my county called Cherotich Sehi, Mr. Speaker, very serious critique of myself and who never supported my political views. But Mr. Speaker, we have had many discussions with her, Mr. Speaker, about what are some of the measures, because she was, Mr. Speaker, she worked in an emergency situation in Ebola, in other parts of the continent, Mr. Speaker. We must listen to these people we don't even agree with. We must give them an opportunity to give all these proposals for us. And I have read some of these proposals are very interesting, Mr. Speaker, especially when we say we must deal with how do we ensure that we have cash transfer. Okay, Mr. Speaker, so I said that the first thing we must be able to do is to listen to as many voices of Kenyans as possible to ensure that these issues are captured, particularly the issues that are dealing with the poor people. Mr. Speaker, we must also deal with, as a House, ensure that we increase the cash transfer that is going to, Mr. Speaker, to families that are vulnerable. And my proposal is that we must support the relevant ministry, Mr. Speaker, that is of labor, to ensure that the cash transfer reaches to at least 10 million families to deal with the situation that is in the country. We must also, Mr. Speaker, deal with the issue of water. Water and sanitation becomes a big challenge. Mr. Speaker, the committee should be able to make recommendations on how best the government at this time will expeditiously deliver water, especially to the vulnerable areas and in slums, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak to the issue of farmers. Mr. Speaker, as we continue dealing with this problem, food must be able to reach to as many Kenyans as possible across the country. And for us to continue getting food, the farmers must continue producing, Mr. Speaker. And we must continue providing for opportunities for these farmers to deliver the food to the centers that are required, places that are required, Mr. Speaker. I suggest that, Mr. Speaker, a stimulus package be directed to farmers to ensure that also they produce food, cheap food, that will be able to serve as many Kenyans as possible. Mr. Speaker, I also suggest that we must deal with hiring more doctors and nurses. Mr. Speaker, we have a big problem. This issue is going to give us a big problem in the side of hiring medical personnel. And Mr. Speaker, the resources that have been put for this emergency should go towards hiring more medical personnel, Mr. Speaker, even if it means in a contract for 2-3 years. And Mr. Speaker, the government should work expeditiously to find ways of graduating all the medical students who are in the final year, Mr. Speaker, so that they can get out of university to go back, Mr. Speaker, to the field to help as many people as possible. Mr. Speaker, we must also think about creating and establishing field medical centers like the ones we saw in Nigeria, Mr. Speaker, where they converted Stadia to field medical centers. And Mr. Speaker, We should have at least 4 field medical centers in Nairobi to be able to deal with this situation. And we can have Kasarani, we can have Nyayo, we can have City Stadium, Mr. Speaker, and maybe it Kamtoyoyo or any other place that will be designated by the relevant committee. Mr. Speaker, we must also find ways of incorporating matters of mental health. Many people are suffering, Mr. Speaker, for being told you are going to be confined in one space in the house. Some didn't even have good relationship among themselves, Mr. Speaker. Some, Mr. Speaker, are finding it difficult to think about what will happen to their children when the food they have comes to an end. Psychosocial support must be, Mr. Speaker, ingrained in this very important venture. Mr. Speaker, I want to also to suggest that, Mr. Speaker, tax and exemption should be visited upon all those who are producing, Mr. Speaker, essential goods and services, goods specifically, Mr. Speaker, so that then these goods can reach people in a very cheaper way. Mr. Speaker, I want to also say that we want coordinated and joint communication. Mr. Speaker, just like you said and Senator Aaron said earlier, we want to ensure that communication that goes to the public is joint, accurate. But, Mr. Speaker, it is not also time to suspend. We are not suspending, Mr. Speaker, human rights. We are not also suspending freedom to communicate. Mr. Speaker, I saw one member of parliament was invited to write a statement for, Mr. Speaker, postulating that the numbers could reach 10,000, Mr. Speaker, by May. And the next day, the ministry announced that the numbers could reach 10,000 by May. In fact, the only thing one would have asked is, did this member of parliament have a leakage of what the ministry was doing, or he has certain good ways of working out statistics, Mr. Speaker, and should be incorporated in the national emergency team. Mr. Speaker, let people talk. Let people communicate. We are not going to accept that there will be misinformation or what, but let Kenyans talk. Let people, if we are going to be scared, maybe we'll be scared enough to stick to our houses, Mr. Speaker, and to follow the procedures that are required. Mr. Speaker, in the field of communication, civic education must be, Mr. Speaker, increased. I can tell you, even when I called my village today, there are many people in many parts of Kenya, in many villages, Mr. Speaker, they are still greeting themselves. They are still socializing, Mr. Speaker. They are still drinking busa in their community. They are saying this is a holiday for drinking busa, Mr. Speaker. They are oblivious of the dangers that come with this disease. Mr. Speaker, civic education must be done, but, Mr. Speaker, the provincial administration also, or the national administration, must take advantage of its structures to the village level to ensure that communication reaches to as many people as possible to ensure that, Mr. Speaker, we deal with this disease. Last, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that government must and should take, Mr. Speaker, all the experts we need and utilize, Mr. Speaker, all the leadership they have. Mr. Speaker, it is not enough. Although we have praised our former colleague, Senator Mutahi Kagwe, it's not enough to think that this coronavirus is being dealt by 1 or 2 ministers. We want to see the cabinet, Mr. Speaker, meeting more often, the cabinet having various committees, Mr. Speaker. That one that deals with finance, one that deals with energy. We want to see light being everywhere, Mr. Speaker. One that deals with agriculture. We want to see response on agriculture and livestock, how you continue to guarantee food coming, so that we don't reduce this to, 2 or 1 department of government. Government now must recalibrate itself to be a COVID responding government. Because, Mr. Speaker, the only thing we might end up doing in the next 2 years is dealing with the impact of this disease and, Mr. Speaker, responding to its impact in the economy, in, Mr. Speaker, all sectors in the country. And I dare say to the President that this is the time to call the leader of opposition, Mr. Speaker. This is the time to call all party leaders that are in the country, Mr. Speaker. This is the time, Mr. Speaker, for you to sit with your deputy president, Mr. Speaker. This is the time to sit more with your cabinet. There is no person in this country, Mr. Speaker, who should not go and sit on the table to provide solution to the problem. But if we think about that, or if I call the leader of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, if I call the leader...
What is your point of order? Let's be careful about the points of order so that we don't... have 1 hour to go.
I have only 2 minutes, Mr. Speaker, please, if you can restrict the point of orders, so that I can sit.
What's your point of order,
If I keep responding to point of order...
No, Mr. Speaker, thank you. I just wanted to get clarity. what he's talking about, because he's advising the president to sit with so and so, to sit with so and so, and there is nothing to show that he doesn't sit with them.
Order. That was very clear. It's just an example that he was giving. He doesn't have. Let's not interpret beyond what he has said.
What we need, Mr. Speaker, is to put aside our political competition and doing political scores with COVID. So that, Mr. Speaker, there should be nothing wrong with me and Orengo and people who are in the opposition or which political divide. They must, Mr. Speaker, find solution to the problems affecting Kenyans. This is not the time for dealing with politics. This is not the time to go to sectoral places. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy with this committee. This committee will play a role bipartisan. And I hope the National Assembly will also come up with a similar committee. They work together. They give solutions, Mr. Speaker. Myself and the minority leader will be available, Mr. Speaker, all the time for consultation with this committee. And when needed, that, Mr. Speaker, the House needs to be convened. Even before Tuesday next week, if that is required, we will convene the House for that purpose. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and ask the Senate, who is supposed, Senate Minority Leader, Mr. Speaker, sorry, I had been earlier advised that it was the